the question of like, okay, what are the root causes of that? Then the question becomes like, okay, the common mechanism is the faster inhale. And then the next question is, what are all the things, or I guess rather, what are the most important things that influence this faster inhale? Okay. And I've boiled it down to 5 major things.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Radical Health Rebel podcast. This week, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Dylan Petkus, a dedicated health professional who not only overcame his own severe sleep apnea, but has since made it his mission to help others do the same through natural lifestyle measures. In this episode, Dr. Petkus shares his personal journey from struggling with exhaustion and the numerous health risks associated with untreated sleep apnea to finding relief and vitality through alternative therapies. His first-hand experience gives him a unique and compassionate perspective, which he now uses to empower his patients. We delve into the serious health risks posed by untreated sleep apnea and discuss Dr. Petkus's comprehensive 5-step system, aptly named SLEEP, designed to help you manage and overcome sleep apnea naturally. Stay tuned for an informative, entertaining, and engaging conversation with Dr. Dylan Petkus on how to reclaim your health and improve your sleep naturally. Dylan Petkus, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Dylan, to kick things off, could you share your decade-long struggle with sleep apnea and how that motivated you to devote your career to empowering patients to manage sleep apnea through alternative therapies?
Yeah, of course. So luckily, out of the whole decade, it was mainly about 2 years I spent struggling with that. It's been a decade of helping others with that. And for myself, it started off like a lot of people do, where it's like you start to feel like it's something off. I'm waking up, I'm a little bit tired. Can I just have some coffee all the time here? And then for quite some time, going about and just feeling like something's off here. Go to the doctor, get a sleep study, and you get told you have obstructive sleep apnea, which isn't a great thing to hear when like in your mid-20s, because I do understand and appreciate that. I look like I'm like 15. I've heard it before, but just like it's devastating because like you for those who may not know, sleep apnea is something where like you just get told you gotta do a CPAP. That's like the only option, CPAP or get surgery or just have like a miserable life. So actually tried out a CPAP and it's like, oh, it is just awful. It's like it's like someone just like blowing air in your face and down your mouth all night. And it's also like dehumanizing in a big way. Some people like do it and they're like, wow, this is life-changing. And hats off to you. The rest of us, CPAP defects, if you will, we're kind of like up a stream without a paddle. I don't do water sports very often, which is why I'm not good at that analogy.
So sorry, just to jump in. So for those that don't know what CPAP is, it's like an oxygen mask, right?
A CPAP stands for continuous positive airway pressure. It doesn't always necessarily include like oxygen gas as like a canister and being fed into it. Sometimes it does, but it's typically just ambient air that's being pumped into you. And if we think about how sleep apnea develops, which is just your airway in response to a faster and a regular, more turbulent inhale, will just like a vacuum kind of pull the walls of your airway together. Okay. Perhaps the best analogy in real life is if you've ever tried to drink a milkshake with a paper straw, usually the milkshake wins. That battle, the paper straw will collapse because there's a lot of negative airway pressure that then pulls the walls of the straw together. Same thing happens with your airways at night. So CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, it provides air such that it prevents this collapse. Okay. So you're actually breathing on top of it. The machine's not breathing for you technically, but it's like providing extra pressure in your airways so that it stays open. Okay. But obviously, if you're trying to exhale and you have something trying to breathe into you in a way, providing air, it's not comfortable. It's not. And that's why a lot of people are like, yeah, is there another option? And that's the journey I went down. Right. And, back in my day, before we had Facebook ads telling us we need mouth guards all the time, that like, I'm not that old, but that makes me feel older, of where, I tried out mouth guards, there's mouth tape, like there's these different chin strap devices. You can wear this thing that is like a tongue stabilizer, and like all of it helps a little bit, but like not for long enough or like enough, right? Maybe it adds on like 30%. But if a 30% improvement means I can get by on the day on like 3 cups of coffee instead of 4 cups, like what did I even just do? So I decided to take a step back because, when you get caught up into something, especially around health, like whoever, it's like a doctor, whoever else you're seeing, it's like, okay, this is like the main idea that I'm given. Let's just roll with this, right? But once it doesn't really work enough, you kind of have to take a step back and look at things differently, okay? Because otherwise you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, and you are.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's part of the process.
Sorry, just to jump in for a second. So your main symptoms were tiredness kind of all the time, right? Most like, throughout the day.
Oh, yeah, like dead tired. Like you wake up, feel like you haven't slept, brain fog, hard to think. Caffeine doesn't really do it anymore. You just kind of drink it as a formality. And then like end of the day, a lot of achiness, crashing down, irritability, like everything just like, really upsetting, whether it's like you stub your toe or like, I don't know, world events going on. Just everything is just awful because you don't have capacity for anything.
Yeah.
And then you just go into the cycle where like, okay, well now it's time to sleep. And like you dread sleep because, for me, I was waking up probably like actually consciously waking up probably like every 60, 90 minutes every single night, which as you can imagine,
horrible,
not great for sleep quality.
Yeah.
It's like having a baby and a puppy at the same time. So that's just will kind of ruin your day on repeat for like months at a time there.
Yeah, that sounds extremely rough. I mean, I guess I'm lucky in some way that, I'm someone that I go to bed, my head hits the pillow, I sleep, and I wake up when I've had enough sleep. I've never really had issues sleeping at all. So I can't sympathize, but I can empathize. Right.
Thanks.
So can you, before we go on to talk about, how you moved into helping people with sleep apnea, can you talk a little bit about your kind of academic and professional background?
Yeah. So I've read way too many books. So, and too many degrees. So undergraduate was in kinesiology, which is something people outside of America understand as a concept, but inside of America, I might as well say like voodoo or witchcraft. But really it's just like applied physiology. And then pre-med, all the courses and all that. And then at that time, after college, I was like, do I want to go to medical school? Do I want to do research? I actually went down the research road at first and entered into like a PhD program where you just focus on the most minute thing you ever could possibly imagine. But it was in physiology. And so having a lot of background experience, because eventually I left the PhD program just with a master's, go to medical school. But with the PhD program, which I don't like, I know people like sometimes poo poo on PhDs, which I don't get. Like, oh, you're not a real doctor. I would argue that the PhD process is harder than the medical school process by a little bit. And there's a reason that I think in Germany, like when you get your PhD, there's like a knighting process, but that's neither here nor there. But it's very rigorous academically is the main point. So then take that, go to medical school, and go to typical medical school. I mean, there's really only so many things to do in medical school except a lot of studying and running around a hospital. And then residency for family medicine. So all of that being like a really good, I mean, rigorous, because I think I'm a little bit more of a stickler on research and statistics, especially statistics. But also like concurrently, it's a lot different when you're going into those more traditional routes, like a medical degree, as opposed to, I'm nothing to say, like, I hate the whole dichotomy of like alternative. Okay, someone decided that long ago. That's great. But I do have a lot more lean to more like natural, whether it's, call me crazy, diet is going to affect how you are. your circadian rhythm is a big factor. Wow, I'm crazy. Mainly because I went through it myself, and then, bringing that alongside with the more standard education where it's like PowerPoint slide of pill disease, PowerPoint slide of pill surgery, rinse and repeat. But yeah, that was my background.
Sure. So what age were you when you completed your medical training?
Which part? I mean, look, like,
yeah, I mean, by the time you you become an MD.
Oh, MD, what was I, 28, 29?
Okay. And
something in there.
And what age did you start getting sleep apnea?
Oh, about 25, 24.
Okay. So you was in your training at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So can you run us through, again, I know you've touched on it, but maybe go into a bit more detail in terms of you started feeling tired, you knew something wasn't quite right. What did you do to kind of try and find out, what you needed to do, or perhaps to get a diagnosis? What were your steps at that point?
Yeah, so it starts out with a sleep study, okay, and then it's like, okay, yeah, your AHI, which is your sleep apnea score, says you have moderate sleep apnea, which is a weird way to describe like how miserable you are. Like, oh yeah, moderate. I'm like, this doesn't feel moderate. I'm not sure. This is not congruent with that word. And then really after that, like, because when you take things in your own hands, whether it's like, I had an Aura ring, or as I call it, you're married to crappy sleep ring. That's whenever I see that, I'm like, oh, you have another marriage. And really looking at that, HRV, etc. But also like just subjectively, because like sometimes like when you just like feel so bad, it almost doesn't matter what a number says, because like you can have a good sleep score and then like, okay, well, 82, awesome, but like, why do I want to do nothing but lay around today? So that's really in terms of how I was tracking those things. At that time, they didn't have at-home sleep studies like they do now, or even like overnight pulse ox monitoring. Not really a thing at that time. A lot more common today, which I think is great, being able to have that data. But for me, it was a lot of just like, okay, subjectively, and also kept doing sleep scores along the way, like how are these things going. That was the main way in which I was tracking, and then being able to see like, okay, with each intervention, what's moving the needle, what's like not really doing anything, and being able to really like splice things out as they were not performing. Because like, I don't know about you, but I don't like spending my entire day doing things for my health. Prefer to be efficient. But that's how I went about that process with the tracking, or being more aware of the different metrics.
Yeah. So would I be right in saying that most of the things you tried, you were just doing it off your own bat, really? Like you obviously you're a medical student at the time, and you were trying different things. You were monitoring the results, and I'm guessing I'd be right in saying that each time you tried something, it didn't really get the job done.
Oh yeah, the grand majority of things are failures. I mean, like, that's how else did it take 2 years? um, and with that, like giving things a chance, because I know sometimes the temptation is like,
Yeah.
do this one night, oh, it didn't work,
Yeah. Yeah.
understandable when like you're very desperate to feel better, but statistically not a great way to go about things. You got to give it like a time, a week, have your hypothesis, your parameters all set up beforehand. Which is funny because I was like just talking about like statistics earlier today. So I swear I'm not this nerdy for anyone watching or judging me, like, who's this guy? But really being able to give things a good go, because I know a lot of times, especially more so when we're like, okay, increased protein, like, what is this doing for me? Like, it's good to see that feedback, right? So that's how I was really navigating things of like, okay, like, how's this reflected, and knowing when to like judge things properly. Because like with a diet, like diet's going to be a little bit slower burner, right? Whereas like a breathing exercise is going to be a faster response time. Environmental fixes will be a faster. I mean, well, it depends on the environmental component, but those can be faster, slow. But you got to have the expectations around that. So like when I'm like working with clients a lot, I'm like, hey, this will be a quick thing. This other thing, you will just have to trust me that you'll be happy that you did this 3 months from now.
Yeah. So in terms of what was your motivation to help others with sleep apnea, what was it for you that kind of created that spark to think, right, this is the type of people I want to help? What was that for you?
Well, I think definitely when you go through it yourself, it's like, oh, cool, like I got this thing, right? I mean, like people even do that with like really silly things, like, oh my God, do you watch the thing on Netflix? It's great. Like, so having gone through it myself, and also like in primary care, when I did work at a clinic, now just doing all things online remotely, but when we're working at like someone else's clinic, you have your hands tied on things, right? Like you got 15 minutes here to talk to the person, do a note, and like, okay. And like you don't get the or like, for instance, like someone comes in with sleep problems. Well, I know the correct answer is like, let me try to explain some of these things, right? But the correct answer inside of like insurance algorithm driven medicine is like, oh, okay. Do you snore? Okay. Are you a man? Okay. Are you? Okay, I'm not asking that one. What's your weight? Are you tired? Okay. Check the box. Okay. Well, according to this flow chart, you're going to go to the sleep specialist and they're going to tell you your sleep also stinks, and then get a sleep study and then put you on a CPAP. Sorry, this is just the board game of modern medicine. That would be a fun board game to make.
I mean, it's actually hard to listen to because, and it's sadly what the medical community has become is algorithm followers. That's certainly the case in the UK. And if you don't follow the algorithm, you get your license taken away.
Yeah, probably eventually. I mean, what's kind of I'm really curious to see like Gen Z as doctors. Well, goodness, I hope I never have to see one. Because like right now, like, how do I not throw my entire professional field under the bus? Let me just tell you what's typical. So what's very typical, and this is more so in practice. I mean, all practices are pretty much driven by the EMR, the electronic medical record. Doctors hate them as well. It's really for insurance because basically insurance drives. This isn't really a conspiracy theory. Like everyone knows this. Insurance drives, at least in the States, by a lot. I'm sure in other countries as well, but more so over here. You can only practice. You can only like give and recommend typically what someone in insurance is going to pay for,
Mm.
right? And that makes sense because, like, okay, option A is you can take this pill and your insurance will cover this. Option B, this other pill, but like you're going to have to pay like $2,000 a month. Most people, without like any other consideration, will go with option A because that's what's already like, I mean, paid for by insurance, really prepaid by the person, just because you paid for it with your premium, like, or taxes, doesn't mean you didn't pay for it. But then as a result, what happens? Well, medicine is only going to be taught with things that have been practiced, right? So then let's say pill A, well, that's the main thing used, or surgery A, or CPAP, right? That's the main thing used. And then that's going to be the main thing taught. And then just to save time, because the name of the game of modern healthcare is we want to be able to provide the greatest reduction in symptoms with the least amount of resources possible. Okay. Which sounds great on paper, right? But there's limitations to that algorithm. So for instance, I'm sure many married men have an algorithm. And if you don't, this is some great marriage advice. When your wife is asking you something, pretty much the answer should typically be yes. And sometimes, since I'm in that algorithm, and it works out, because if she's right, she's right, and if she's not, well, if she's right about being wrong, and then she's still right. So it works out for me. Now, at times, I'll say yes, and then we have a dog all of a sudden. I'm like, okay, this is great. Or now we have what happened recently. Now we have 10 fruit trees that we didn't have. Okay, great. So these things happen, which I'm like, maybe a little bit more consideration, but overall pretty good. Now that's what happens with modern medicine to save time and resources, because if so many people are sick and there's only so many doctors and you only have so much time in the day, yes, it's going to lead to that. But notice I said reduction in symptoms. Because ideally, it's not just sleep apnea, right? Whether it's like sleep apnea, diabetes, obesity, it would be great if I could have a 30-minute meeting with someone once a week. Hey, let's talk about your diet. Let's talk about your stress reduction. Let's talk about your sleep. Let's have an ongoing conversation about you and your health. But the reality is you get 15 minutes like every 3 to 6 months. So it's limited. Everyone's trying their best. But I think it is, it may seem less flawed at a population level, but then it's more flawed on like an individual basis.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you did a good job at not throwing anyone under the bus with that explanation. I think you did a good job. I'm an outsider. I'm not in the medical community, but obviously I get a lot of clients that have been down that route. And I think from my point of view, it'd be fair to say that the algorithms that have to be followed, probably the biggest benefit to that is that it generates profits. And probably the most negative part of it is that generally the thing that is suggested is not necessarily in the best interest of the patient.
Right. I would say like insurance companies and actuary scientists who are determining all these things, like it's they have a fiduciary duty to let me say that in actual English. they have more of a duty to the company. Okay, because this is another like harrowing thing, and this may be the if there's like an anonymous book about this in 10 years anyway, is like there are times, if anyone's familiar with the movie Zoolander, which I know is like a little bit of an older movie, but it's at the very end when like Ben Stiller's character is doing his thing. This will make sense, everyone, stick with me. And then like Will Ferrell's character is like, am I the only person taking crazy pills? Like all of his looks are exactly the same. That moment in like modern medicine, like there'll be moments where like it's like 9 doctors around a table, and then it's like we're speaking with case management or someone from the insurance company of like, if we can do this treatment. I'm like, wait, why is it set up like this? So uh yeah, or I mean that's really the major thing. Or even like in the EMRs, like it'll like if like basically it's just like you're clicking through like, okay, do you want to do this? And like there'll be like pop-up menus or pop-up screens that'll be like, are you sure you don't want to use this treatment or da, 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 da? Which may be the one more recommended. But yeah, a lot of times it does come down to, I mean, I don't have that much exposure to like the sales inside of all that. But there is a lot more business to medicine that doesn't necessarily directly serve each patient coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of going back to the original question.
Yeah, I like this, but where were we?
Yeah, we went on off on a great tangent. That's all good. That's all good. What was I guess your spark to say, right, I want to now go and help people that have sleep apnea? What was that motivation for you?
Oh yeah. So like having for myself, and then like, yeah, this is where we were before, like seeing it day in and day out in like that restriction, that limitation we talked about, and like not being able to do anything about it. Right. So I was like, well, let me do something about this. So that's why like whether it is the book I have out or like YouTube videos or working with like clients on like a remote basis, that's what like sparked that to be able to like, okay, well, like what's this other outlet I could have? Because like 15 minutes over here. And it was also during COVID, so the idea of like, yeah, let's get a brick and mortar office when everyone's like on lockdown. No. So being able to do that, like online health education, educating clients, and helping them see like, hey, you can also do this and that. And being able to do that in a way, because it is really, I mean, I hate to use again Facebook and Instagram ads as a representation of the healthcare marketplace, but sadly, I think it's a good approximation. But like when like you scroll through and for anyone who doesn't believe me, just type in sleep apnea on Google or just talk about snoring out loud, and then go onto Facebook, and you'll be bombarded by mouth guards, mouth tape, and every other weird thing you can imagine. Maybe even me. And then it's all just like quick fixes. It's all like put this in your mouth or do this to your pillow or like get this surgery. And that does work for a proportion of people. I would say like those things lead to improvements for 20 to 50% of people. I mean, that's a wide range because it's a wide range of interventions. But even so, like, we had to consider the graveyard of that, right? Because like as many surgery success stories that there's probably 2 to 4 like horror stories. And whenever there is a less invasive way to do something, or like a more, I think less invasive and more empowering, like when you're doing like whether it's like breathing exercises or diet changes or optimizing your environment, that's gonna be better, because then like you're in a place of where you're a lot more empowered to do something about it, as opposed to like, well, I hope this thing works. Like, no, you can make the things work yourself. So being able to give people that back, if you will, like the power of their own health, like, oh, I can do something about that. Because a lot of times, like, I'm not sure if you recall in your health journey, but like there's this moment where you're like, wait, so like how I eat, that affects how I feel? Wait. Does anyone else know about that? Like, there's that moment where you start to like realize like, oh, I can, this isn't just a, get a pill for it sort of thing. It's something you have daily control over, and be able to compound that over time. Now, again, that may not be what everyone wants. Some people want a quick fix, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not here to, be a health dictator. But there comes a point people want like, more gradual things that do have a long lasting impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly the way that I've looked at health for at least the last 20 years, probably more than that, is that, there's a definite root cause of an issue, or quite often causes as well, with any condition. What have you found in terms of what are the potential causes for sleep apnea?
Yeah, so there's one core mechanism, and then there's a few factors that feed into it. So the core mechanism is the milkshake straw we talked about
Mm-hmm.
earlier. But how that pans out a little bit more in depth is all obstructive. This may sound like groundbreaking. Maybe I'll just get a Nobel Prize based off this, but obstructive sleep apnea starts with some sort of obstruction. Okay, let take some time to let that sit in. But the point being is, like, it could be, maybe you have a deviated septum, maybe you have an enlarged adenoid, that's like a tissue in the back of your oral passageway. Maybe you have a enlarged tongue, maybe you have a receding jaw. There's like 20 plus different anatomical things
Mm.
that can lead to sleep apnea. But the thing is, it's not so much those 20 different anatomical things, it's the common issue they cause. Like, all roads lead to Rome, all obstructions lead to that collapsing of the airway. Now, the reason they do that, okay, because it's not just anatomy by itself, okay? So, like, in studies where this would have been an awful study to do, dentists and ENTs just like look in their mouths, how's your anatomy? Okay. Is this considered something that would cause an obstruction? And then, like, what they found is that about like 40 to 60% of adults have some sort of obstruction. Okay. But yet that doesn't always correlate. And actually, the minority of people only have sleep apnea. Okay. So if the correlation was stronger, all of those people, obstruction always should have been sleep apnea. So, like, what's the missing
Mm.
ingredient?
Mm-hmm.
Well, back to a straw analogy, anytime you have a smaller airway, right? Well, your body still needs the same amount of air. So how would you get more air? You have to breathe through that straw faster. Okay. So obstruction, narrow airway, you have to breathe faster. It's the faster breathing, and especially the inhale, that will lead to this collapse in your airway. So, like, all sleep apnea leads to that core mechanism.
Mm.
Now, getting out of there, is it as simple as surgery? For some people it is, and that's great. But there's a reason, and this is just across the board, and this is a study out of Stanford, is that when you look at all the surgical interventions that happen, like whether it's kind of clearing out the palate or other sort of areas, what happens is that the surgical cure rate, which is a reduction in symptoms of 50%, is about 30 to 50%. Okay. Another way to say that, just as simple as possible, is surgery is basically a coin flip if you're going to have about a 50% reduction in symptoms.
Mm.
Not great odds, because if it was just anatomy, call me crazy, but I would expect a much higher percentage.
Mm.
If the problem is that thing, we take that thing out, and the problem's still there, doesn't add up. Because guess what? Even if you take out the anatomical thing, okay, we remove the trigger for fast breathing, but guess what? Your breathing pattern creates this, like, mind-body connection, okay? Or I think muscle memory is a better term, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's say, like, a basketball player, they have a certain muscle memory of shooting, right? So they're pretty much always doing the same motion, and it becomes on autopilot. Our breathing is the exact same, okay? It is the exact same, has this muscle memory. So if you have
Mm.
something that triggers faster breathing, and you take away the trigger, you're still going to have faster breathing.
Mm.
So then that will still lead. So that's why even like some people with sleep apnea, weight does contribute to it. Okay. But some people lose weight and they're like, I still have sleep apnea.
Mm.
Or some people, a lot of the clients who come to us they do not look like the classic sleep apnea at all. They're like normal weight, and they don't have like a big neck. They don't have like, there's like, what's going on? So for the question of like, okay, what are the root causes of that? Then the question becomes like, okay, the common mechanism is the faster inhale. And then the next question is, what are all the things, or I guess rather, what are the most important things that influence this faster inhale? Okay. And I've boiled it down to 5 major things, and this is the crowning achievement of my life. This acronym, it's SLEEP is the acronym. Okay, I know it's great. It is fantastic. Took a while, but we figured it out. So S stands for slowing down your breathing. L is lowering stress. The first E is establish a rhythm. Second E is enhance your environment, and then the P is prioritize nutrition. Okay, so those are the major factors, and really like the most important one out of all of them. Okay. And I'm not saying this by itself will fix everything, but the more you're able to retrain your breathing with certain exercises and routines, that will provide the biggest contribution, like by far, to how you're able to sleep at night.
Awesome. So going back to your story, at what point did you find that out for yourself? And then kind of what did you do to kind of get over your own sleep apnea?
Yeah. So when I was like learning about this muscle memory or brain breath connection, however you want to call it, I was like, okay, well, very rudimentary thinking. I was like, well, let me just kind of try to breathe slower. Call me crazy. Let me just do that. Let me do these breathing exercises. And when I did it, I was like, this is like such bull donkey. I was like, okay, I'm gonna, because there's a lot of like things in the air. So I'm like, well, how is this breathing exercise at 9 p.m. going to help me from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.? There's this whole gap of not consciously aware of it. But so I did it, and we can go over the exercise. Well, I don't actually remember the exact exercise I did, but we can go over the exercise that I give people now, which is probably way better. And just being able to have so just practicing slower breathing and slower inhale, slower exhale, all through your nose. And then like that night I went to bed, and then I woke up, and sometimes like you wake up and there's just like sun coming through like the window, and you're like, what the heck happened? What's going like that? You can only really appreciate it when you slept really poorly for a long time. That's what happened like that night. I was like, is this it? Is this the golden ticket? It wasn't. It improved over time. The effects like waned because there's the other factors I had to discover. But that really opened up like the whole door. I was like, whoa, okay. So if I like just focus on slowing down like the inhale, slowing down the breathing, that will lead to that result. And the reason it does go through the night, carry over, and this is something people already intuitively know. So maybe if you're someone who does like meditating, or maybe you do yoga or any sort of things like that, if you consciously try to focus on breathing slowly, okay, say you did that for 10 minutes, and then afterwards, without you consciously thinking about it, you will notice you continue to breathe slower, okay, because we're rewiring that muscle memory that I talked about earlier. So if you do, and that's why I always recommend like do this like literally when you're laying down for bed at night. Okay. One, because it will reset that connection that we want, that better breathing pattern. And also, this is kind of the big secret, so I'll let you in on it. It's mainly because, well, I mean, yes, it's for that first physiological part, but also you can't argue that you're not going to lay down in bed for a little bit and you're not going to breathe. Okay, you're going to do both of those things tonight, no matter what. You might as well just like do a little breathing exercise while you're there, and then get way better sleep. So it all kind of works together like that of being able to do that. And then like once I had that, I was like, okay, what like that's when I really dove into like what are all the things that affect breathing patterns. And that's where I found a lot more of the more like metabolic things, if you will, right? Um, and that coming together really like, it was like 18 months of like struggle and like getting nowhere. And then like that last few 6 months or so really turned the corner quickly after I was like, okay, getting this all figured out here.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, just going back to the breathing, what I think possibly one other mechanism is if you're spending time to breathe slowly, you're going into a more parasympathetic state. So once you're asleep, if your natural inclination is to be in a rather, I mean, even though you're asleep, a somewhat sympathetic state, if you've pushed yourself more parasympathetic, it's going to take more time to get to a kind of a sympathetic type state where your breathing's increasing. What do you think I'd be right in that assumption?
So it's part of it, and that's why the second factor is about lowering stress, because when someone has sleep apnea, okay, there's a very specific reason when I mentioned when I was consciously awake for like every 60, 90 minutes, okay? Because someone with sleep apnea will unconsciously wake up anywhere from 5 to like 50 times per hour, which is 40 to 400 times per night.
Yeah.
Okay. That is crazy. That will have such a massive impact on your sympathetic nervous system. So that's why like spending additional time to really bring yourself down, to bring you out of overdrive, if you will, is important. But there is that separate rewiring of that neural pathway between your brain and your diaphragm that is just as important. But obviously they're connected as well, right? Because how you breathe will affect your nervous system. But also like you can do fast breathing, right? And that will also, I mean, we don't need to get into all the different fast breathing variations, but those will also positively influence your ability to shift into a parasympathetic state. So they're very closely related, but indeed separate things to be focused on.
So in your acronym SLEEP, so S was slowing down breathing. What was L?
Lower stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
And things like meditation, etc.
Yeah, meditation, like short. What I typically like in the book, I have like a little MP3 on this. Just like I like to have like very short, efficient practices, especially when someone's just starting out. Because one, you have someone with sleep apnea meditate, they're just going to take a nap. So that's just what happens. So like having something where it's like a bit shorter, like I have like a little 5-minute exercise. They just go take a little visualization, a little bit of breathing on top, but it's something that they like apply to what they feel is like their most stressful part of the day. Because the biggest thing to do when starting out and like lowering your nervous system overdrive is to find like the peaks you typically have in your day, right? Like when you're the most stressed out, okay, and bring those down, right? Because meditating is great in terms of lowering the baseline and preventing those peaks from happening. But a lot of times when people are just starting out, I want them to focus more on like, okay, your boss just told you this, school said this, your neighbors did that, whatever. Okay, that happened. Great. Let's practice. Bring your nervous system like back down there. Just to, start to open people up. And also when people are just starting out, that they're at pretty low capacity, and being able to have them do like a 5-minute thing as opposed to, don't get me wrong, I love meditating. I meditate every morning. But just starting out with something small, I think it's more effective.
Yeah, I think the other thing that might be useful as well, because I can understand that if someone's sleep deprived, if they try and meditate, they're gonna nod off. But doing something like a moving meditation, whether it's like a gentle form of yoga or Tai Chi or something like that, could be an option as well.
So oddly enough, so kind of harkening back to I would say it was an epic tangent on healthcare. I enjoyed it. What gets paid for dictates learning and also dictates research.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
Because then the question becomes, it's not how else can we approach sleep apnea? It's how do we build a better CPAP?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
great. Okay. Um, so, but oddly enough, the point of me saying that was like, there are shockingly few, um, it's called a CAM, so complementary alternative medicine. CAM will be the term. There's very few CAM studies for sleep apnea, which like blows my mind.
Mm,
There's tons of that for other stuff, like for Alzheimer's. There's a lot of CAM studies. For insomnia, there's a lot of CAM studies, right? But for sleep apnea, there's like none. But for a few that they do have, Tai Chi actually is one of the few CAM studies for sleep apnea. So
mm,
they have participants do Tai Chi, and for anyone not familiar, I would say and I don't mean to insult the field of Tai Chi when I say this, just to gross simplify for people not familiar. It's the art of moving your body and particularly your arms very slowly.
mm,
Uh, it's very relaxing in a strange way, in a good way. Doing that, even though it was far away from bedtime, guess what? It helped reduce the number of apnea episodes dramatically.
mm,
Okay. And for anyone watching at home, like let's say like someone's going like this for like 10 minutes. It makes no sense of why does that help you breathe at night? Well, it's
mm.
because of that nervous system connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. So the S and the L, what was the first E again?
So establish a
Yeah.
rhythm, like a good circadian rhythm, good body clock, where that is, I guess the simplest sense, like doing things at the right time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like, for instance, scrolling through Instagram at 1 a.m., wrong time. Okay. Because that's going to tell your body, it's going to get a light signal that it's daytime when it's night. Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're like me and you're in a darkly dim lit office. I know, shame on me. I was going to do this outside, but I was like, I'm not sure what the neighbors are going to do. Or they were mowing their lawn for like 8 hours yesterday. I'm like, we don't have that much grass. Point being, if I was inside this dark office all day, well, my body's getting a night signal when it's daytime. So that's going to throw
Mm,
everything off.
mm.
So that's pretty much what it's. I mean, there's a lot to it, like when you want to time your meals and
Yeah.
best time for all those different pieces.
Yeah.
That's the most basic general sense. And like,
Yeah.
even just like, that's what like reducing screen time, for instance, like comes down to. Like, yes, we're going to be, I'm on a screen right now. Surprise.
Yeah.
That'd be weird if I wasn't just like, you don't see me. But being able to like get the right signals to your body at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Yes. I mean, a lot of it's quite simple, isn't it? And if you think back to our ancestors 4,000 years ago, what would they have done? They woke up when the sun came up. They probably went to sleep not long after the sun went down, right? They
Yeah,
didn't
they would
have.
wake up, they would check their social media, check their email, and then have an espresso. Yeah, that was times were simpler.
Yeah. But in essence, if people could move more towards that, that would help balance their rhythms, right?
Oh yeah, a ton. Because like the more you're able to, kind of two things, like being more aligned to, yeah, like going outside when there's light, because the light will program your circadian rhythm, but also just like simple things. Because this is when I got clued into a circadian rhythm. So if you're ever someone who has like bad sleep for whatever reason, a lot of times you will fall into this awful cycle of, I didn't sleep well on Monday night. Okay. So Tuesday, I take a nap. But now that nap was too close to when I go to bed. So now I'm going to
Mm.
bed later on Tuesday. And now I'm waking up at a different time on Tuesday. And then that affects my sleep on Wednesday. Like it just becomes this, it just like gets thrown off for the
Yeah.
rest of the week. So
Yeah.
even just like having a steady sleep schedule would also like fall into that category. Now,
Yeah.
we can get into like absolute versus relative. Well, we probably don't have time for absolute, relative, Zeitgeibers, time givers, and all that. But that's the general idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things when I'm working with clients, I'm just talking general. I'm not talking sleep apnea, but I try and get people to go to bed as close to 10 p.m. as possible to try and get as much of that optimization of you know the highest level of growth hormone that you've got around that time. Um, and then people say, well, I go to bed at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever it may be. If I was to say to them, I want you to go to bed at 10 p.m. And I always say this to them. I said, if you went to bed at 10 p.m., you're going to lie there for 3 hours cursing me. So
Yeah.
what I want you to do for the next week is go to bed 15 minutes earlier than you would normally. And then once that becomes their rhythm, it's like, okay, now I want you to go to bed 15 minutes earlier than that time. And I gradually bring it down because I don't know your experience, but I find trying to get people to jump too big a jump just doesn't work.
Well, typically for people like that, I'll just call them in the middle of the night to keep them up, and then they'll help. No, it yeah, definitely having a gradual approach, because like best case scenario, as NASA has shown in trying to like adjust people's rhythms a whole lot, which you have to do for space travel, the most you can adjust something in a day is about 2 hours, and you have to do like a lot of things. It's like shine this bright light here and eat this at that. Like, yeah, it's problematic. But yeah, like shifting, like I tend to be, because like I tend to be a little bit more aggressive because I'm really, really hands on with people. So like maybe 30 minutes a night, advance it.
Yeah.
But also like typically people are able to adjust, because like sleep deprived people are a lot easier to adjust their rhythm because they don't have one. And someone with like a set rhythm there. And also, just fun fact while we're here, so shift workers, they have 5 times the rate of obstructive sleep apnea as daytime workers. Now, this is for 2 reasons. 1, your circadian rhythm is a big part of how you breathe. Or 2, somehow employers really know to only hire people with obstructive sleep apnea for night shift work. Further research is needed, but that's literally what that paper said. It's like, well, maybe there's I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I don't think so.
Yeah, and I guess things like avoiding screens and artificial lights after a specific time would probably benefit them as well.
Oh yeah. Because that's what typically people are doing till 2 a.m. It's not like they're up till 2 a.m. like, I don't know, like painting and or like I'm sketching out this new, like they're typically, I don't have a phone near me, but they're, well, it's funny. I like we'll see when people like, whether they send us like an email to reach out about something, or if they like buy our book, we'll see what time that happens. A surprising amount of people will buy or interact with our stuff between like 10 p.m. and like 4 a.m. I'm like, well, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah. So that was the first E. What's the second E again?
Enhanced environment.
Okay. What does that mean?
So there's going to be, and this is a technical term, there's going to be a bajillion things in your environment that will impact your sleep. Okay. And really environments, obviously anything external too. So we could include screens in that, right? But there's often like many other things, and we'll keep it to better environment for now. Cause yes, things in your daytime environment can affect your sleep, but also the better environment's going to be the kind of the 20% of the focus that gets you 80% of the result. And it could be a whole slew of things. It could be your temperature of the room, not your temperature, air quality, what's going on with like, say, your pillow. Because a lot of people don't think about this, but like we hear like, okay, yeah, you spend a third of your life sleeping. That's true. Okay. I guess ideally, but also like you spend a third of your life breathing in extremely close proximity to like a piece of fabric that you probably don't think twice about. Like, and just as an example, because like my dad used to have like really bad chronic sinusitis and would snore because of that, not sleep well. Okay. And I was like, well, let me just poke around your bedroom. And like his pillow, he said it was the same pillow. He was like, I had this pillow before I met your mom. And I was like, oh,
wow,
mercy. and it had like black mold in it. I was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
well, should probably
Yeah.
change this out. I mean, $60 for, I mean, that's a
Wow.
really nice pillow, $60. Maybe like $20. Um, yeah, so that was exceedingly helpful. It's things like that. It requires a little bit
Mhm.
more hunting
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as like, plug in an air purifier and you're good to go. Um, and also because like, different people do better with different ambient temperatures. Or also like noise is a big consideration. So those different factors will affect. But I would say like out of all of that, I think the air quality is probably the best one because even if you don't have sleep apnea, air quality will affect how you sleep. If you do have sleep
Mm.
apnea, well, like what is bad air quality? What's the first part of your body that comes into contact with?
Yeah. Your nose.
Your airways. So if
Yeah.
those are inflamed and irritated, is it going to be harder to breathe or easier to breathe?
Mm.
It's going to be way harder.
Yeah.
Because anything that makes your airway more narrow, we're back to breathing faster again, more collapse in your airway.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd imagine Wi-Fi could potentially be quite an issue as well on at night.
Yeah, yeah. So anything that's going to impact, like, because again, whether it's Wi-Fi, and that's probably the biggest culprit. You
Mm.
get like all the like dirty electricity and all the other different factors.
Yeah.
But yeah, Wi-Fi because it's clear in the literature. Because I know a lot of people be like, "Well, but where's the evidence? We just want to put a sticker on our phone." Uh, whether you're looking at how Wi-Fi alters the brainwave architecture of sleep waves at night or how it reduces melatonin, take your
Yeah.
pick.
Yeah.
It's not going to be great. Now, obviously, it depends on the power density. There's a big difference. And well, I need to like understand this part of like civilization of why some people have like their router underneath their bed. I'm like, it could be anywhere else. Anywhere else.
Mm.
What anyway. And that power density is going to have a big difference. Whereas like let's say your bedroom is way over here, your router's way over there, it may not be a problem. It may not be as big of a problem because walls or stuff that really reduce the signal strength. Yeah, so there's a lot of different factors.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing to consider is if if your bedroom neighbors, you've got a neighbor the other side of that wall, you don't know where their Wi-Fi router is as well. It could be that their
Well, it could
router is.
be, yeah. That's why knowing the power density is really important because sometimes people they're like, oh, but I can see these 30 different, you know, 30 different Wi-Fi signals, and woe is me, and we're all gonna die, and blah blah blah. I say that in a very loving way, but the reality it is that's why it's important to know, like, okay, know the numbers, okay, because seeing 1 versus 2 versus 3 versus 4 bars is like that's not a measurement. That's just your computer trying to convince you to hook up to Wi-Fi.
Mm.
So yeah, it's important to know your numbers on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the final P, I remember it was something to do with diet, but I don't
Oh,
remember what
it's just Petkus. No, I'm just
the.
prioritize nutrition.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to discount that being at a healthier weight will help with breathing at night. It will. Is that the direct thing you want to target? No, because you shouldn't have to wait 4 to 6 months to lose 20 to 40 pounds to sleep better. Okay. So there's going to be kind of two main categories I can think of, at least at a general standpoint, because obviously when you're working with people, you're like, oh, wow, you really have this deficiency. And then you want to do things around that. But as like
Mm.
a bigger, broader level, it's hard to do that. But kind of the bigger major things are, okay, what are the really, like, I think the macronutrient profile is going to be
Mm-hmm.
important. And then
Yeah.
also like, what are the main causative inflammatory foods
Mm-hmm.
going on here?
Yeah.
So macronutrients, again, that's going to come down to the person, but like really just increasing protein. I found like, because like in the book, I have like it's kind of, and I'm very upfront about this. I'm like, hey, you're gonna have your individual things, but I've seen a lot of people, and these are like the main things that apply to like most people most of the time. Protein definitely being one of those, because when you're breaking yourself down at a higher rate, your body needs more things to build itself back up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that one's usually deficient. But also, like, because you kind of can't change macronutrients in isolation. Well, I guess you can, but because a lot of people, like, if you go up in protein, it'll cause you to go down the other ones, which may be good, because when people are in a state of sleep apnea, they're typically only sugar burners. Okay. So if they're eating more carbohydrates, just creating this unsustainable sort of downward spiral in their metabolism. So that's one aspect. And then the other one being more about, like, what are these anti-inflammatory foods that are more specific to someone's airway, and of course are more broad, because, like, you and I may have different food sensitivities, and Joe versus Timmy may have different food sensitivities, so on and so forth. But I typically, and these are typically like the biggest crutches for people too. So I'll just say it: coffee. Sorry, everyone. Really, I mean, you can go back on it once you fix this, but there is a reason. If anyone's a vocal coach or a singer, there is a reason they will not drink coffee or have dairy if they're going on like a tour, or if they're going to be speaking a lot, because those things cause like more congestion and inflammation in your airway.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's typically a good. Now, I mean, you can still have cheese, everyone, because I don't have any. I mean, one, this study hasn't been done. Two, I don't think it ever will be. But just from working with people, cheese, just by nature of being more of a solid, doesn't hang around, as it doesn't like completely coat the area, so it's moderately less inflammatory. Just so you can walk away from this and not feel like I took away all your dairy pleasures in life. But the milk, you gotta do something about that. But those would be the main things for nutrition.
What about alcohol?
I guess that's just such an obvious thing. I don't even think about talking about that. But yeah, don't do that. Sometimes, like I was like just updating the book yesterday, and I was like, should I have a section on soda? I was like, do people still drink soda? And like, lo and behold, when I look over, because to answer that question, we have like an intake form people first fill out, and I'm like, half these people are drinking soda. Okay, all right, I guess. So I guess I'll have to add an alcohol. I guess I don't drink enough to even remember that being a thing. So I'll include it in the book. I won't start drinking just for this.
Yeah, you've upset a lot of people now. You've upset all the coffee drinkers and all the dairy drinkers and all the, alcohol, coffee, dairy. You've upset a lot of people now.
Yeah, because like with alcohol, especially, because it's not only is it going to be a metabolic toxin. Well, let me say this before we go much further in insulting people, and not insulting them, but taking away their pleasures in life. It's not a forever thing. All right, you need to have temporary boundaries to rebuild resiliency and freedom. Okay, it's just like if you were to get a horse. Okay, you don't put it into a pasture without like any fences. Okay, that's going to be not good. That's going to be someone else's horse like in a week, or dead. So like you want to put up like boundaries so that you can like train or exist and do things in there, so that like, because if you train an animal, except my dog, at a certain point, you don't need to like wear the leash. You don't need to have the fence, because like they know like, okay, this is the proximity I want to be in. Same thing for a lot of these health things we talked about. Because a lot of questions I get with people are like, am I going to have to be like this forever? No. But back to alcohol. One, yeah, it's going to be like a direct toxin to your cells in a bad way, inflammation. But also, two, it will increase the collapsibility of your airway. So, and a lot of times, like, when are people drinking alcohol? It's not like, well, ideally not like first thing in the morning. You have a different problem. That's a different broadcast. But like more towards the evening, right? So if you have a muscle relaxant in your system before you go to bed, whether it's alcohol, whether it's melatonin, okay, melatonin is also a smooth muscle relaxant. That's going to lead to more collapsibility of your airway. Okay, so the more of those you can avoid as you strengthen your airway or improve your breathing patterns, well, and it should have been the conjunction there. that will make you more resilient to those things. But if you're really struggling right now, you gotta pick and choose your battles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, it's all a choice, isn't it? You can have this or you can have that. It's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
So, got one more question for you. Really, how does sleep apnea affect other areas of health?
Oh, which one? Where do you want to start?
Wherever you
Wherever.
want.
Okay, so let's just go from top to bottom. Uh, what's like the scariest things I can say? I don't mean to be scary, but it's just kind of reality. So like one night of sleep deprivation, which is defined as 5 hours of sleep, will lead to the accumulation of beta amyloid plaques that can be measurable in your cerebral spinal fluid. That is one night of 5 hours of sleep. What do you think a year does? What do you think 2 years do? What do you think 3 years does? This is why one of the highest associated comorbidities of sleep apnea is dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. It's your brain. Other things in your brain, your mood. Okay, this is why like sleep apnea and snoring equals like irritability, mood swings, etc. later, because you have no capacity. You're not making the neurotransmitters to restore really anything, and just leaving you in a place where it's just like your brain is not functioning as it should. Okay. What else can we talk about in the brain? Eye health. We can skip that one. Oh, wait. Back up to the brain. Stroke. Okay. It's not the number one killer. We'll get that's next. But it is the number one like debilitator of people with sleep apnea at a certain point. Because I know we ragged a lot on modern healthcare, but if I have a stroke, knock on wood, like I'm glad I have insurance. But then the life after that of where like whether you lose function in one arm or completely everywhere or can't talk, not pleasant, not what anyone wants. So dramatically increases the risk of stroke. And that's because we talked about earlier, sympathetic nervous system being way up. That's going to drive your blood pressure up. Okay. So stroke and heart attack would be the next one. So that is the number one killer of people with sleep apnea. Just plain out, you're having a heart attack. More chronic issues. So diabetes is going to be a lot higher because if all these things are off, your blood sugar regulation is going to be way off. Autoimmune is going to be a lot higher. Anything that leads to more chronic inflammation in your body is going to lead to more autoimmune. Cancer is going to be elevated. All right. Very similar reasons, more inflammatory milieu of your body or landscape. That's going to happen. And then there's also, the practical sense of another very high killer of people's sleep apnea is falling asleep at the wheel. Okay. Because if you're dozing off, you're going 55 miles an hour. That only goes so many ways. And then last one, which is the least common, but like obviously the most scary, is suffocating in your sleep and not waking up the next morning. Okay. In the United States alone, that happens. That's about 36 people every single night to sleep apnea. And all the other things I mentioned before are much higher in terms, but I think it's like 100 people per day will die of a heart attack who also have sleep apnea. So it really boils down to, because like when you don't have sleep, whether it's sleep apnea, whether it's, I don't know, you have insomnia, like your body cannot repair. Okay. But then the added stress of sleep apnea is like your body's choking itself out like every 2-3 minutes.
Yeah. So if you were going to give someone with sleep apnea 3 top tips, what would you prioritize as the top three things for them to do?
We'll just do one because we did, I feel, enough tips today so far. But the number one most important thing is tonight, some sort of breathing exercise. And we'll go over 3 different variations. We'll go over that. We'll go from easy, medium, hard. Okay. So as you lay down tonight for bed, all right, you're going to do one of the 3 breathing exercises. Okay. Number 1, I call it just like even prolonged breathing, or you can call it 10 in, 10 out. Okay. And for all of these, it's all nasal breathing. Okay. If nasal breathing is really hard for you, then still inhale through your nose, but you're allowed to exhale through pursed lips. All right. So 10 in, 10 out is exactly as it's described. Okay. Inhale for a 10 count, exhale for a 10 count. Okay. As simple as that. And you just do that. You can basically do that till you drift off to sleep. That's the preferred way, because after a while you kind of just get into it, and it is very relaxing and very easy to maintain. Now, if you are using a CPAP, BiPAP, or another similar device, you would do this for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then you would put on your mask. And if you can, it's challenging. You can continue to do the exercise and then drift off to sleep doing that. Okay. So that's exercise 1. That's the easiest. Exercise 2, okay, of this foundational set is box breathing, okay, with a 5 all around. So what that means is 5 count inhale, 5 count pause, 5 count exhale, 5 count pause. Okay. Box breathing. Then beyond that would be rectangle breathing. Okay. This is the hardest of the 3. It's a 5 count inhale, 10 count pause. Okay. 5 count exhale, 10 count pause. Okay. I would start at the 10 in, 10 out. If that's easy, move up to box. If box breathing's easy, move up to rectangle. Okay. If any of it gets really hard, stay there. This is not meant to be, this is supposed to be relaxing, not to be like you're already having issues breathing. Let's not cause more. And that's how you progress in this more like fundamental set of exercises.
Awesome. That sounds great. So Dylan, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Today, I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at the rest of my calendar.
What's next in life?
What's next in life?
What have we got coming up?
What am I doing? I'm updating the book. And then what else is next? Might start including more snoring in the book, because I'm realizing that people don't like snoring a whole lot, which in my mind, it's easy to conceive that sleep apnea equals snoring. But I guess because snoring, someone who's snoring and tired but doesn't feel like they have sleep apnea, they're just in denial. Sorry, you are. That's literally the definition. So being able to, branch out a little bit and talking more about that's definitely a big thing. And I don't know, this morning I was like, maybe I should start doing some like webinars, maybe twice a month, maybe. This is literally for my like to-do list this morning. I was like, what is next? But other than that, this weekend I'm definitely going to go to, we have like springs here in Florida. Sometimes people will call them the water hole if you're Southern. But definitely going to go do that. There's a nice, it's called Wakulla, and everyone can try to imagine how to spell that in Southern words. But it has manatees in it, so it's really nice and pleasant and relaxing. So that's
nice.
That's my immediate future. As it's Friday, as we're recording.
Sounds good. And where can people find you online, and where can they buy your book?
So our website. So you want to pick your poison based on your confidence in spelling certain words. You can go to optimalcircadianhealth.com. It's not optimum, it's optimal, and it's circadian, not cicada or curcumin, but circadian health. So optimal circadian health, you can find that. You can also Google Dylan Petkus book. So that's my name, Dyln, and then Petkus book. That's actually the most common way people find that. Like Google will tell you who's searching your name, like, oh, okay, well, I should just tell people to do that if that's what's been working. And that's on our website. And yeah, you just click get the book. There's a button there.
Awesome.
That would be the best way.
And you've mentioned it a few times. Are you on social media?
I am, for better or for worse. So Instagram, TikTok, and where else? I mean,
I guess they can find all that on your website anyway.
Yeah, it's all there. You can tell I love social media.
Awesome. Dylan, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it because not only has it been information, very good information, but it's been quite entertaining as well. I've just loved having you on the show.
I try to entertain. I do. I know.
Yeah, you did it. You did a good job. You did a good job.
Yeah, it's been good to be here, talk about things, and I enjoyed the tangent. It was a good one. I like that one. That was
it
was classy.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome. So that's all from Dylan and me for this week. But don't forget to join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.